Welcome to this week's Rocks Talks. I'm Faiza.
I'm Parazad. And today we have the lovely Tiffany of the podcast Yalla Rocks and most recently the Belly Dance Bundle. Yay!
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course, I'm glad that when I reached out and asked, you were like, yes, let's do it.
Well, yeah.
Every time.
Yes, of course. Thanks for reaching out. This is exciting because you wanted to talk about online, like right now with the way everything is going, with the way our world is, we've all pretty much been
moving online.
Had to move online. And you have lots of expertise in that. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been running the Belly Dance Bundle. We just finished our 4th year. So I've been shouting into the ether, into the void about belly dance on the internet for years. So I don't like how we got here, but I'm really happy that the zeitgeist of the whole community has changed, right? Because I used to have to convince people online learning was okay and that it was a thing and that it wouldn't take over your in-person practice. And then it did because it had to. But so what we've had to do as a community is completely change the way we think about practice and completely change the way that we think about class and working on our dance. Now I don't have to do that anymore, right? I don't have to convince people to come hang out with me on the internet. Like, we are all doing it. It's taken our entire industry to a completely new level. Because before you would take a workshop with somebody and you'd be like, I love that dancer. She speaks to me. She teaches the way I like to learn. Like, I love her style. I love their style. And then that was it. You know, maybe you could travel to see them somewhere else again next year, or you would spend a lot of money and go see them somewhere else, but you couldn't study with them online necessarily. And now it's going to be like de rigueur for people to have that option, right? Even when workshops come back, you're going to go take a workshop with someone and the next question is going to be, how do I keep studying with you? To me, like, that's amazing.
No, you're right. Like, the community was absolutely the other way before. It's like, well, bye, Sadie. I can't fly out to Colorado, so hopefully you come out to Cairo Shimmy Quake next year, or like whatever it was.
And I think that's a lot of times too why you kept seeing the same people at all of these events all the time. You'd see the same 20, 30 dancers at every event because people want to keep studying with them because it's the only way to do it. Right. And so I think by changing the way that people are studying, by bringing the internet into it more, what you're going to be seeing more of is a different group of dancers coming up through like the tiers of the workshop scene, because you don't have to wait on workshop instructors, like workshop hosts, to necessarily like find you somehow magically, right? Bring you in. But then you're also not locked into bringing the same people back all the time, because that's the only way that your students are going to get that instruction.
What you're saying about distance too, like we have Amanda Rose slated to interview, and you know, we interviewed Amani Jabril and we've interviewed Katie Sahar, and none of this I feel like would have been possible if COVID hadn't happened. For better or worse, you know, we are an LA-based belly dance duo, so we have a lot of great people in the Los Angeles area. Like, we would not be wanting for guests, but we would have been limited. Like, you know, we would have only been interviewing LA legends and, you know, LA current dancers and, you know, LA this, LA that. So while people elsewhere might be interested, it'd be mostly LA. Whereas now we have all kinds of people that we're able to interview. But it's because, like you're saying, like, you know, back in the day, you're like, no, you can do online learning. Everyone's like, no, I can't. Now they're like, oh, Zoom calls? I'm a pro at Zoom calls. Everyone's a pro at Zoom calls now. And like, that's the thing is, you know, before we might have been like, oh, so like, would you be, there's this app and you have to do this thing, but no, everyone's like, Zoom call, done.
So I run like the online portion of Journey Through Egypt with Safar Saida, who's out your way, right? We've been using Zoom for years to run, you know, watch parties and talk about research and do stuff. And we would put the invite out and I would have to answer whole bunches of customer service requests. How do I use this? Do I need this? How do I do that? How do I do this? The last lecture that we held, we did 2 back-to-back, like 2-hour lectures on the Said. And I think we had like 60 people showed up live and I didn't answer a single customer service request. Everybody just was like, boom, I got it. And like for the bundle, I've been trying to convince people who weren't online to come on and teach workshops for the bundle for years. I'd get a lot of people who are like, oh no, like I don't really see the point, like, cause it's not gonna help my business. You know, I don't really have a newsletter, it doesn't really matter. Like this isn't gonna help me. Whereas now, like you guys are saying, you can go to almost any dancer and be like, hey, will you come teach a workshop online? Will you come do an interview with me? Will you come do this? Will you come do that? And they're like, yeah, sure, because everyone's starting to realize that their customer base isn't locked to where they can physically travel to. It is a global community. And it's, to me, it's magical.
Even just the last showcase that I did on Zoom with Curvaceous Belly Dance.
Who, incidentally, I have been teaching online
For years.
She's in the UK. I'm here in California. It's dinner time for her and morning for me,
Exactly.
but it works.
But it's
Go ahead.
so funny because she was doing that, and because she's in the UK, the last showcase I was in, we had a dancer from France, we had a couple dancers from the UK, we had dancers from New York, we had dancers from LA. So like basically from like Paris over, all the major spots we had dancers from, which would never happen, you know. Before it'd be like, oh, well, here's a special treat. Here's a dancer from France. It's because she's here for like the Iraqi dance intensive. It would never happen otherwise. Like you would have to smash in all of your gigs. Like you have to, okay, I booked this restaurant, this restaurant, this restaurant, this restaurant, but I'm available for this gala show. These are the workshops. Like this is how we used to have to pack it in to make a work trip worth it for like the cost of the ticket. And now we're just like, oh yeah, I'll sign on from my living room that I've spruced up a bit.
Right, everybody finds their gorgeous backdrop, the one spot in their house that you can't see the mess.
The other thing that I found that it just never would have occurred to me, probably because it wasn't available to me, but I live about an hour outside of LA. I dance in LA. I do all of my work in LA, except I was teaching locally. But in order to take classes, I had to drive down to LA. And so going to Dance Garden meant trying to find the block of classes that would make a 3-hour round trip worth it. Now I can pick and choose the classes I want because I just roll out of bed and click on the link and just take the class in my living room. And it's just that 1 hour of class that I have to block time for.
What's interesting to me though is that Zoom is the thing that came to the forefront because I literally had never heard of Zoom until COVID.
Really?
I knew about Skype, I knew about Google Hangouts, I knew about like everything else, but I had never heard of Zoom. And then they're like, there's this thing called Zoom. And I'm like, why isn't anyone using Skype?
I worked as a virtual assistant for years for travel bloggers, for the location independent movement. And so I've been in like other business spheres online, and people have been using Zoom for 6 years by the time COVID hit. I think as a community, right? It's not just you. There were I know so many people who didn't know Zoom was a thing until COVID hit. As an industry, as a business online, we just didn't exist. We're like so far behind even other internet niches that I think that's why when COVID first hit, all of us were like just completely overwhelmed and completely like, what is happening right now? Because not only were we having to like, holy crap, COVID, catch up, everything's shutting down, we have to do this, but we were catching up even to where other people were at that same point. So instead of being like, we have to jump forward 5-10 years, we had to jump forward like 10 or 15 years in the span of 6 months. And so the entire belly dance world was reeling from it. And that's why you saw this huge explosion in online like everybody going online. Not that there weren't people online before, right? Because this is the fourth bundle. Like we've been doing this for years,
right?
But it wasn't even a majority of people. So we went from like less than 10% of dancers online to 100% of dancers online, instead of like 50% of dancers who kind of maybe had something on the internet to 100%. That would have been way less of a like shell shock moment. But because as an industry we were so far behind, it was just complete chaos.
So before we get into the belly dance bundle, I just want to take a step even further back and say, how did you get started in belly dance? Because that's our favorite thing to hear from everybody.
Yeah. So after I started talking more with dancers about this particular question, I thought that my journey was like really unique, but it's not. It's not at all. I'm half Brazilian, and so when I was growing up, we had Globo, which is like the big television station in Brazil. We pirated it. My dad had and this is like pirating in the 90s, so my dad had like these big chip cards and a satellite dish in the backyard. We were like hacking it from the satellites. I don't even know how he managed to figure this out. So we used to watch all the novellas, all the soap operas. And there was one called O Clone, which ended up, it turns out after it ran in Brazil, became the most syndicated soap opera of all time. And the main character was a half Moroccan, half Brazilian woman. And in it, she belly danced. Which I now understand, like with my, greater knowledge of culture and history and dance, that it was totally out of place and completely wrong what she was doing. I was 10 or 11 or something, and I saw it and I was like, I'm gonna learn how to do that. But at the time, time where I grew up, kids classes weren't a thing. Nobody would teach me till I turned 18. I mean, we tried to find classes. My mom tried really hard. So she got me a couple of VHSs, but like I never really got into it. When I turned, I think it was 17 or 18, there was a community ed class, and I just caught a glimpse of it in a flyer one day, and I was like, oh, I bet I could do it now. I bet somebody would teach me now because I'm older. And I went, and it kind of spiraled out of control, right? It took over my life like it takes over everybody's life. You know, I went to college, I found a teacher, she needed more help at the restaurant. So I ended up, before I was nearly ready to be doing so, I ended up doing that. I moved to LA for a while. I studied really intensely at Dance Garden with the teachers there. And then I moved back to Florida. And when I moved back here is kind of when I went like professional for real. You know, before I was kind of like dabbling in restaurant works and gigging and stuff. But when we moved back, I started teaching more. I got in with the restaurant scene here in town, which is thankfully is pretty extensive. We have more restaurants that want dancers than dancers, which is an odd place to be in.
Where is this?
So it's been really great. And then I got into travel hacking and location independence. So I moved into being a virtual assistant there. And then I kind of took all of this knowledge that I had learned about business over the years doing that, and I just brought it back with me into the dance space. And now I've kind of found like my zone of genius, as it were, is more on the business side of dancing. While I am an artist, we all are artists, I think I'm more of a business person than I am an artist. Whereas most artists are artists first, and business is like a what the hell is this thing that I am also supposed to be doing?
I mean, it's true, and you know, a lot of artists see ourselves that way, but even Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Big Magic, was like, don't sell yourself short and think that you have to marry a sugar daddy in order to be like a solvent artist. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
You owe it to yourself. And, you know, even, oh my God, War of Art and, you know, Big Magic, all of them are just like, there's, you know, Perazad the artist, and then there needs to be Perazad LLC.
Yes, backing up that artist.
For those of you who watch Entourage, you need to be your own Ari Gold. Which is easy for me because my boyfriend says I am Ari Gold.
There you go.
Because, you know, of course, we all want to take the workshops that are like Argelina on drum solos and, you know, Saidi on Oriental. And like, we all want to take these, but there are other workshops that have been at these festivals for years about, like, you know, when Adrienne would do how to do Photoshop, how to make a flyer, when, you know, you and Sarah Shrapnel are doing like basic business stuff, but people are like, I mean, it's fine. And like,
I just want to dance.
I just want to dance. And it's just, they're selling themselves short as artists.
You know how when you first started dancing and you got stage fright?
I still do.
Like, before we started, I was like, oh man, I'm nervous about this. Now I'm fine. But like, when we started, I was like, when my teacher always used to tell me to pretend to be somebody else, right? Like, to have, like, pretend that you're someone who's confident, or pretend that you're someone who doesn't have stage fright. Or like, I remember Farhana told me once, you write something like on the band of your underwear and it's like your secret, you know, it's like only you know. And so you can walk out on stage like this thing that only you know.
This is so Farhana, and that is so funny.
Except that she doesn't wear them. But I've changed enough times with her.
It's the same way, right? Like, when I pitch contributors for the bundle, before we have this call, like, my room's a disaster, my laundry's in a giant pile, like, no one should listen to me, I look like a hot mess over here. But then I like button it up, I'm like, now I am the business person and I know what I'm talking about. And then we have that conversation, and then the minute we're done, I'm like, oh, like, you put it on for a minute and then you relax out of it. But just like you would with anything else, I think there's so many parallels between business and practice, business and dance, that if we could think of business that way, right? Like social media, like Katie says, consistency is the most important thing. Where else is that what you hear all the time? Practice. There's so many times where like these same things that we already know and already do in our dance are actually the same exact concepts you need to apply to your business, but we just haven't tweaked it yet.
What inspired you to put together the Belly Dance bundle?
So I mentioned earlier, I worked as a virtual assistant for years in the travel blogger space, and I worked for a company called Location Indie that taught people how to be location independent, like how to build businesses online that you could do from anywhere in the world. I was a community manager, I was a virtual assistant, I used to help them do all kinds of things. It turned into like an online business manager kind of position towards the end of my tenure there, and they ran a bundle. They ran a bundle called the Paradise Pack. Bundles are actually really, really popular outside of the belly dance space. They happen in all kinds of industries, and they have for years. I think the first time I helped them run one was like 2016. I helped them just like do a lot of the grunt work, right? The grunt admin work that comes with any business. And I was like, we should totally do this in the belly dance space. And I looked around and I checked it out, but there just weren't enough people online. People were teaching online, you know, like Suheila's been online since like 2009, 2010. So people were teaching online. There just weren't enough people to put together a bundle. So, you know, every year I would kind of revisit the scene and be like, this year, and then finally in 2017 I was like, okay, I think there's enough people I could convince to say yes to me to put this together. We did 2017 and it was way more of a hit than I thought it would be. I was like, if I sell 100 bundles I will be happy, and like we sold 3 times that. So I was like,
nice.
Like, this is awesome, this is great, people are into it. So then it's just kind of been growing and tweaking, because to be completely honest with you, I completely lifted the bundle formula that I was working with the guys over at Location Indie on. I asked them, I was like, can I just copy this entire thing? And they were like, yeah, go for it. Try it out, see if it works. So I just like plopped it over into the dance world, and we did everything almost exactly the same as I'd been helping them do for years over there, just to see if it would work. And some things landed really well, some things didn't land at all, like even a little bit. Here's an example of something that didn't work at all the first year, which is hilarious. With the Paradise Pack, what we would always do is we would have a day-long party during the sale. We would just get online and, you know, have Q&As with all of the different contributors to the Paradise Pack and talk about things and business and location independence, and it was super fun. And so in 2017, I was like, cool, let's do it. So I had 2 days. We had one day that was like a Q&A day, and then the second day was a dance day where everybody came on and did like 10-minute video lessons on this thing. I think over the course of both days, so it was like 10 hours of being online, I was like 7 months pregnant, sitting in my chair running this event 2 days in a row. I think 15 people came total. And all of the contributors promoted it. It wasn't that like nobody had said anything, that the word hadn't gone out. It wasn't a thing, right? Dancers were not interested in doing this kind of stuff online. Fast forward to this year. Well, now online haflas are a thing. So we did it again. We had a party and it was super fun and a whole bunch of people showed up, right? And it was great. But like 4 years ago, that shit didn't work. That's kind of like where the bundle came from. That's, you know, how it kind of evolved into what it is now. And it's a great way for people to try out a bunch of stuff, because taking a bunch of classes online from a bunch of different teachers is really expensive to figure out who you like and what you like, and you know, how you want to get your courses and stuff. To get like a complete, well-rounded practice, you know, where you're doing a bunch of different stuff, is just really expensive. And so the bundle kind of allows people to dabble in a lot of things and try out a bunch of teachers and kind of get the practice that they want to be getting, but at an affordable, like at a really affordable price point, so that they can move forward with the teachers that really speak to them. There are people who contact me about the bundle who are like, I never would have found Amanda or Maheen or Chudney or this, whoever it is, but I took their class in the bundle and they're awesome. So I've been continuing to study with them. And I hear that all the time from dancers, and it's super heartwarming, because to me, it's like promoting everyone's online stuff is my favorite thing to do.
I get that. That's when we have people like, I mean, I'm sure you get this with the podcast, and it's like when people say, oh, I'm loving the show, and I didn't know, like, Parazad's mom is like the greatest fan ever, because
my mom doesn't listen to any of the podcasts.
The thing that she says, and we get this obviously from other dancers, is I had no idea about X, Y, or Z until I watched this episode. And it's so, like, one of the things that I love about us doing this is I'm learning. I've been belly dancing for almost 25 years, and obviously you learn forever. And everybody that we've interviewed has been somebody that I already knew. So I had that information. I had access to that information already. And
the podcast really does open your eyes to a lot of things. So we focus a lot on practicing, right? Because if you've taught a belly dance class ever, you know that your students don't practice enough and they want to practice more, right? Look at them looking around, right? They want to practice more, but they get stuck all the time. They don't know what to practice. They don't know how to practice it. They hit all kinds of roadblocks. And so I like to talk to people about how they practice just in general, but also like how they practice specific subjects or their ideas behind a subject. Because I know for myself, you mentioned like Elizabeth Gobert and everybody, so you might be familiar too with Gretchen Rubin. So the 4 tendencies, I absolutely love the 4 tendencies that she has. And there's a quiz, anybody who's watching can go check that out. I highly recommend it if you're struggling in your personal practice at all, or as an artist, because if you go take that quiz, like she breaks people down into, I think it's upholders, obligers, rebels, and questioners. She kind of breaks down like why people these are just like, things that she's observed about people. They're not like scientific categories.
Sure.
For example, the questioner, which is me, like I am a questioner all the way through. This is why corporate America did not work for me in any way. I need to know, you need to explain to me why something is important, and I need to understand the reason I'm doing something, or I won't do it. I don't care what you tell me, like other people think that you should do this, or you told someone you would do that. Like, no. Tell me why this is a good idea. And so for me, I like to interview people, right, about what they're like. Let's talk about Shabi. Let's talk about Velody. Let's talk about breath work. Hearing dancers talk about their kind of zone of expertise within Rock Sharky and within transnational dance, like you kind of get these little insights into like why practicing this thing is important and why, experimenting this way is important. And then we also like go into some like crazy neuroscience stuff sometimes where we're like, let's talk about habit stacking and like motivation and stuff. And so you really start to like understand and trick your brain into letting you do the things you want to do, but also having exactly what you're talking about, like that understanding and being able to make these connections, when you take a workshop or when you think about practicing something or when you're starting to focus in your dance a little bit more, so that you can dive in without hesitation, because the hesitation kills you. And like all this stuff that we internalize about our dance and about our practice and like how we do things, we miss a day, we don't do enough, we don't know what to practice, so we don't practice, whatever. All these things happen. And instead of going, the system's broken, we go, oh man, I'm a terrible human and I should not be dancing. And what do I even think I'm doing here? I'm a dumpster fire of a human.
Get out of my head.
Of course you don't want to after that, right? Like if you take that step back and you go, oh, the system's broken. I need to scale down how much I'm doing every day. I need to realize that today, like I had to mom real hard. I had to be a parent, or I had to be a homeowner. I had to be the person I have to be for my job. And I didn't have the energy to do that. Like the system is broken. Like what I've set up isn't flexible enough, or it's too rigid, right? Or it's too flexible, because everybody's different, but it's the system. It's not you. Like stop internalizing it.
Tell us a little bit more about your podcast, because I see that like with the challenge, you would have the prompts and everything, but then you would also have the corresponding episode for your podcast with it.
Yeah, so we started it in 2019 for the bundle. I had every intention of continuing it through the year. And then even before COVID happened at the end of 2019, my life fell into complete shambles. Like, have you ever had one of those parts like of your life where literally like dominoes falling, like everything goes wrong, like one after one of those happened to me. And then COVID happened.
Oh my
good.
Oh my gosh.
So that like the podcast did not happen. So when the bundle started up this year again, I was like, okay, we're gonna keep it going. We're gonna start it back up. So we do an episode every week. We release on Mondays. We do the episode, and then there's a corresponding video to go along with it. Sometimes there are prizes for that week, sometimes there aren't. Just depends on kind of what the teacher has going on at that particular time. But having just a weekly something to come back to in your practice and to work on, I think is just really an excellent touchstone for people and for their practice. So like I said, we talk about how people practice, how they set their goals, how they study particular things, and then we cover some other topics. We've done episodes on being a good ally. Like we touch on a bunch of things that maybe when you first look at it aren't a practice. Like you would like, oh, that's not part of my dance practice, but they are. When you expand kind of what working on your dance actually means, you might think that journaling is maybe not working on your practice, but it is, just in a different way, right? Like being an ally is part of something that you have to work towards and do as part of your practice. It's not just something that like happens. Right? Like, it's all these things you have to work towards that aren't necessarily putting your butt on the floor and dancing, learning, researching. I work with Sahara at Journey Through Egypt, so I'm really big on lectures and learning and all of this as well. And so bringing all of that in to your practice, so we cover a whole mess of things.
I feel like one of the positive things that might be coming out of this pandemic, aside from we now get to meet all kinds of people, because I don't know that you and I ever met when you were out here in LA. I don't think we did.
We probably crossed paths, but didn't actually meet.
Yes, probably. Aside from that, and getting to take classes with people that we did not previously have the opportunity to take classes with, I feel like with like what you're talking about with, journaling or getting your business practice, or just all of the other things that surround or doing the research and things like that, which I will tell you, I have been teaching belly dance since 2000, and I have tried so many different ways, so many different formats to try and get my students to do their own research and to develop their own identity as a dancer. That occasionally worked, but mostly there was just a lot of spoon feeding that always went on. I feel like this is forcing everybody. If we love belly dance, we have to do these other things to stay connected to each other and to the community. And this is our opportunity to do this research. And this is our opportunity to figure out how we want our online presence to be and things like that. And so if anything good is going to come out of it, I think that, and I'm really grateful that you had a running start. So yeah, getting everybody on board this year.
I mean, a lot of it comes down to just hearing more stories. Like when you teach your students, you only have your perspective. You know, you only have how you found your style or how you do your research or the things that interest you. And you can point people towards other ways of doing that, I mean, stories you've heard from other people. But I feel like when you hear the story of how someone found their style, for example, when you hear it from them, you can connect with it better. Hearing, like, in an age where you can study with more people more easily and you can listen to podcasts and talks like this and learn from all these different people, you can hear their stories from them, and you're going to take that one sentence, that throwaway sentence that nobody else resonated with, and that's going to change your whole life. That's going to be the key to unlocking your style.
Tiffany, you mentioned with Yalla Rocks, the podcast, that you have something coming up in December.
I do. So this is new. We've only ever done the bundle. The bundle is the only thing that we have ever put out for the past 4 years. And so this is going to be our first like non-bundle project. So we're going to be hosting the Yalla Rocks competition with yourself. So we're taking all of the best things about competitions and none of the worst things about competition and making it available to dancers to kind of stick to their New Year's resolutions. So like, right, we've been talking about practice a lot. All of this folds in, right? For me, it's all about business, online, practice. How do we connect those three things, make them work together? So, you know, we make all these New Year's resolutions as dancers. I'm going to practice more. I'm going to work on this, or I'm going to do that. And then halfway through January, February 1st, are you still doing those things? Nobody, most people are not doing those things.
No.
So what I want to do is to help people come up with really good New Year's resolutions, like not just really vague kind of ideas. Like we're going to come together, we're going to come up with really good resolutions, and then we're going to give you a deadline, right? So competitions, the best things about them are that you have something to work towards, right? So you have an end point and the feedback. Good competitions, you get good feedback from, right? So what we're going to do is you can sign up to our competition and we'll help you come up with a resolution that works for you. You know, if you need help setting up a practice plan, right, we're going to have options to do all these kinds of things. And then in late March, early April, you will be able to submit your video. And when you submit your video, you will get 3 judges to give you really, really good feedback. Like they're going to spend like 20 minutes a piece on each person's video, right? They're going to write stuff. We're going to have video critiques. They're going to get into it. This is not like you're like, I watched this video once and I'm talking into this microphone and I have to tell you everything that you were doing right or wrong in this one moment, right? That doesn't work very well. It can be amazing, but if someone could actually spend 15 to 20 minutes on your video, like you'd get so much better feedback.
Right.
So you don't have to have a costume if you don't want to. You can be in practice clothes against a wall that just makes it easy to see your movements. If you want to get dolled up because it helps portray what you're trying to portray, awesome. It's up to you. And you just tell us what you're looking for, right? What kind of feedback are you looking for? Do you want people to ignore your outfit? Do you want people to ignore what's going on in your house? We'll do that. We'll just work on this part of it. And all of our judges, right, will give everybody the feedback. We'll give it back to you. And congratulations, you did 3 months of your resolution. And then if you want, you can also resubmit at the 6-month mark. So you can take all that feedback, work on it some more, and then come back for, you know, how did I improve on these things over those 3 months with the judges. And, you know, we'll provide resources like, hey, you really need to work on improv. Here are some online classes or some teachers you might want to go take some classes with during this time to kind of work on this thing or that thing or whatever the judges have mentioned. we'll point you in the direction of some resources to do that. So you can kind of take this whole idea of a New Year's resolution and actually do it and compete with yourself, right? Because there's no winners. No winners, there's no losers. We'll probably have a showcase if you want to be included, but you don't have to be. And I'm really excited to kind of play with this on the internet and put something out there that will help dancers in a different way than the bundle does, but with the same ideas in mind.
I love that.
That sounds fabulous. One of our guests was Andalee, who runs Hot Rocks, which is a competition out here, and she really focused on basically doing a competition for dancers, and her whole thing was feedback as well. And it's fabulous. I mean, it really is. It's lovely because sometimes it feels like as a dancer, you want feedback, but your teacher, who is your main source of feedback, has however many other students to focus on as well. And, they might not be looking at you when you do that one weird thing with your hand.
And you do, but you can't figure out how to stop.
Right. And, and then, sometimes it feels like the only other place to really get feedback. I mean, you don't want to throw yourself online and be like, tell me how I'm dancing, internet, because that's just an invitation to a shit show. Well, let's be real.
Or no one will tell you the truth.
Exactly. And then with competition, it's like, okay, well, I can go and I can compete, but like my whole self-worth is on the line.
Right. And like so much of the other stuff is so important at some competitions, right? Like costuming is its own category at competitions. And what if like your style doesn't fit in a nice box? Like you have to force yourself into the boxes of what's being presented in what, the professional category, the rock sharky category, the tribal category, transnational category. And like, what if your style lies somewhere in between what's there? Then you're not going to win anything and you're not going to get good feedback because they're looking at you through the lens of what you're supposed to be, instead of looking at you as a dancer and from like that dancer, like the judge's knowledge of just dance and being like, oh, this could, you maybe want to work a little bit more on your improv. I could see you thinking too much. This part of your style is great. Like this part doesn't seem as developed as this other part. And so you can start to get into like actual feedback on you and your dancing and not you as a part of a box that you may or may not actually fit into.
Aside from this, what else is in store for Tiffany?
We're doing this one right now. We're doing the competition. And then there will be a 2021 bundle. I'm also hoping, don't quote me on this, I'm hoping to do a transnational bundle that's a little smaller than this big blowout bundle we do in the fall, but do like a smaller transnational focused bundle in the late spring, early summer, just because that is underrepresented in the bundle. And this year in 2020, I actually decided to like stop trying to cover all of the bases and just went like hard on the rock sharky side.
Yeah.
We're talking about maybe putting that together. I'm putting some feelers out to see what people think, and we'll just be bringing more of the practice and the dance, putting more events together that focus on that versus putting things together online. Like, here's a workshop weekend that kind of, these are all my favorite dancers. How do we like get it more granular and into something that actually benefits practices in a way that will work for students in different ways, right? Because this competition will help in different ways than the bundle will help with, which will help in different ways than other things that we're putting out. And I'm also working on some email marketing for belly dancers courses. Yay. For the belly dance business.
I need that. I'm trying to work on our newsletter, and I'm just like,
yeah, I want to put together some stuff on launching, because obviously if you saw the bundle and all the things we do, we have quite the launch plan for the bundle, right? And we do these crazy launches for things. And so starting to talk to dancers a little bit more on the business side of that. I do some business coaching for belly dancers. I have for a couple of years just on the side. Whenever someone needs a little bit of help, I show up and help with systems and newsletters and all that kind of stuff. If you want social media, go to Katie. But if you want systems and email and stuff, like, come talk to me, because I really love it. I just kind of geek about it all the time. I'm doing a bunch of different stuff kind of across the board, but I'm here to help. That's what I want to do. I want to help. I want to promote online dance. I want to help dancers practice more. I want to help dancers kill it on the internet. Like, anything I can help with, I'm here to do it.
Tiffany, thank you so much. But before we go, can you please give us all of your social media so we can continue with you after this?
Absolutely. I am the most active on Instagram, the Belly Dance Bundle. I have a Facebook page, but I kind of just is everything that is also on Instagram, as it goes. And then you can get on the newsletter at thebellydancebundle.com. And I love to send emails out with practice tips. That's where you'll hear about the new podcast episodes. And I try to do a little bit extra for my email list than I do on social media or anywhere else, because that's like the VIPs are all on the email list, as it were. So you can do that at thebellydancebundle.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at the same.
Well, that was Tiffany from the Belly Dance Bundle. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Please look out for her new podcast episodes for Yellow Rocks. They release on Mondays, and keep an eye out for signups for the competition with yourself through Yellow Rocks in December and January. Otherwise, this has been Rocks Talks. I'm Parazad.
I'm Faiza.
Please always give us a like, share, and comment if you can. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Masalama.